First contact. The sky above Sydney had never looked so alien. Commander Jack Mason remembered countless nights gazing at these same stars, dreaming of what lay beyond. Now, as the Cosmax ships descended through the atmosphere like metallic predators, those dreams had transformed into nightmares. "Commander, we've got multiple contacts." Lieutenant Sarah Chen's voice crackled through his earpiece. "They're not following any known flight patterns. These aren't test runs anymore." Jack gripped the railing of the observation deck at Sydney's military command center, his knuckles white. The first signs had come 3 months ago: mysterious signals, unexplained atmospheric disturbances, and strange geometric patterns appearing in deep space surveillance feeds. The world's governments had tried to keep it quiet, but panic had already begun to spread. "Get me a direct line to Central Command," Jack ordered, his voice steady despite the chaos unfolding before him. "And someone find Dr. Vasquez. We need her expertise now more than ever." The command center erupted into action as the first explosion lit up the harbor. The Opera House's iconic shells reflected the orange glow, creating an almost beautiful apocalyptic tableau. Jack watched as civilian vehicles clogged the streets below, their headlights forming rivers of light flowing away from the city center. Elena Vasquez burst through the door, her lab coat billowing behind her. Her dark hair was tied back in a hasty ponytail, and she clutched a tablet displaying readings Jack couldn't begin to understand. "Commander Mason," she said, slightly out of breath. "You need to see this. The energy signatures from their ships, they're unlike anything we've ever encountered. But there's something familiar about the underlying patterns." Before Jack could respond, the building shook violently. Through the reinforced windows, they watched as a Cosmax ship, easily the size of a cruise liner, took position over the central business district. Its surface was a deep, iridescent black that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. "Dr. Vasquez," Jack said, his military training keeping his voice level, "you have 5 minutes to tell me something useful about these beings. Preferably something we can use to fight them." Elena's fingers flew across her tablet. "Their technology appears to be based on quantum manipulation, far beyond our current capabilities. But look at these energy spikes." She showed him a graph with dramatic oscillations. "They're not random. There's a pattern here, almost like." Another explosion rocked the building, closer this time. The lights flickered, and emergency sirens began their haunting wail. "Commander!" Lieutenant Chen called out. "They're deploying ground forces. Multiple locations across the city. And sir, they're not what we expected." The main screen showed footage from street-level cameras. The Cosmax ground troops weren't the mechanical robots they'd prepared for. They were something far worse, beings that seemed to shift between solid and energy states, their forms flickering like bad television reception. "Phase-shifted matter," Elena whispered, her scientific curiosity momentarily overwhelming her fear. "They found a way to exist between states of matter. That's why our initial scans couldn't get a lock on their ships." Jack's tactical mind was already racing. "Can we hurt them?" "Conventional weapons would be useless against their phase-shifted state," Elena replied. "But..." She paused, her eyes widening as she studied new data streaming across her tablet. "There might be a way. Their phase shifting requires an enormous amount of energy. If we could disrupt that energy flow..." The building shook again, and parts of the ceiling began to crack. Jack made a quick decision. "Dr. Vasquez, gather your team and equipment. We're relocating to the underground facility at Lucas Heights. Lieutenant Chen, initiate evacuation protocol Alpha 9. "Sir," Chen responded, "what about the civilians?" Jack looked out at his beloved city, now under siege from an enemy they barely understood. "Deploy all available units to evacuation zones. Priority is getting people out of the combat zones. And get me General Richards on the secure line, we need to coordinate our response globally." As they rushed to evacuate the command center, Elena grabbed Jack's arm. "Commander, there's something else you should know. The patterns I'm seeing in their energy signatures, they're not just similar to something we've seen before. They're identical to theoretical models we developed in Project Aurora." Jack stopped in his tracks. Project Aurora had been a classified research initiative studying quantum telecommunications. It had been shut down 3 years ago after a series of unexplained accidents and the disappearance of key research personnel. "Are you saying they've stolen our research?" Elena shook her head. "No, I'm saying it's more complicated than that. These aren't just aliens, Commander. Whatever the Cosmax are, they're connected to us somehow. And I think that connection might be our only hope of stopping them." As they descended to the underground parking facility, Jack's mind raced with implications. If Elena was right, this wasn't just an alien invasion, it was something far more complex. And somewhere in Sydney's burning streets, in the quantum patterns of their enemies' technology, lay the key to humanity's survival. Echoes of Aurora. The Lucas Heights facility hummed with emergency power as Elena Vasquez stood before a wall of holographic displays. 3 days had passed since the initial Cosmax invasion, and Sydney's skyline had been transformed into a grotesque maze of alien architecture. Dark, crystalline structures had begun growing from the points of first contact, spreading like technological infections across the city. "Play it again," Jack ordered, his eyes fixed on the central screen. The footage showed the disappearance of Dr. James Chen, Project Aurora's lead scientist, 3 years ago. The security camera captured him working late in his lab, then a sudden surge of energy, a flash of light that looked disturbingly similar to the Cosmax phase-shifting technology, and then, nothing. "There's no way this is a coincidence," Elena said, manipulating the data with practiced gestures. "The quantum signatures are identical. Somehow, Project Aurora didn't just theorize about phase-shifting technology, we accidentally discovered it. And I think I know what happened to Dr. Chen and the others." Before she could continue, Sarah Chen burst into the room. "Commander, we've got movement in the western sector. And, sir, you need to see this yourself." The tactical display shifted to show live footage from a reconnaissance drone. A group of Cosmax soldiers was engaging with a civilian pocket of resistance. But something was wrong. As they watched, one of the alien warriors took a direct hit from a makeshift explosive. Its phase-shifted form flickered, revealing for a split second a horrifyingly familiar face. "That's impossible," Jack whispered. The face belonged to Dr. Marcus Way, another scientist who had vanished during Project Aurora. Elena's hands trembled as she enhanced the image. "This is what I was afraid of. The Cosmax aren't just using our technology, they're using our people. Project Aurora didn't fail, Commander. It succeeded beyond anyone's expectations, and someone or something took advantage of that success." Jack's mind raced with the implications. "Are you saying these aren't aliens at all?" "Not exactly," Elena replied, pulling up more data. "I think they're human consciousness trapped in phase-shifted forms. The original Project Aurora team discovered how to shift matter between states, but something went wrong. Instead of just shifting technology, they shifted themselves. And whatever they found on the other side." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "I think they made contact with something out there. Something that showed them how to fully utilize phase-shift technology. And now they're back, changed, enhanced, but still fundamentally human. If they're human, why are they attacking us?" Sarah asked, her voice barely hiding her horror. A new alert flashed across the screens. More Cosmax ships were entering the atmosphere, but these were different. While the first wave had been sleek and predatory, these new vessels were organic, almost alive. "Because they're not alone anymore," Elena said grimly. "The Project Aurora team found something in quantum space, and now they're its advance force. The real invasion hasn't even begun." Jack straightened, his military bearing taking over. "How do we fight them?" Elena moved to another terminal, bringing up Project Aurora's original research. The phase shift technology has a fundamental flaw. It requires incredible amounts of energy to maintain the shift between states. More importantly, it needs to be precisely controlled. If we could disrupt that control, we could force them back into normal space, Jack finished. Make them vulnerable. Exactly. But there's more. Elena's fingers flew across the keyboard. The quantum signatures suggest that the consciousness of the original team is still intact. If we can disrupt the phase shift long enough, we might be able to communicate with them. Maybe even help them. Sarah looked skeptical. Help them? They're murdering civilians. Are they? Elena challenged. She brought up casualty reports from across the city. Look at the pattern. Yes, there's destruction, but it's primarily focused on military and technological targets. Civilian casualties are surprisingly low for an invasion of this scale. I think part of them is still fighting whatever is controlling them. Jack studied the data, seeing the pattern Elena had identified. So what's our next move? We need to get to the quantum communications array at the University of Sydney, Elena said. It's the only facility in the city with equipment sophisticated enough to attempt communication on their level. If we can establish a connection, maybe we can understand what really happened to Project Aurora. That's suicide, Sarah protested. The university is deep in Cosmax territory. Those organic crystalline structures have completely overtaken that sector. Jack was already formulating a plan. We'll need a small team. Quick and quiet. Dr. Vasquez, how long would you need with the equipment? 20 minutes, maybe 30, Elena replied. But we'd need a way to get close to one of them. The quantum communication has to be precisely targeted. A new alert sounded, and the screens filled with fresh satellite imagery. The organic ships were deploying something new, massive structures that began to descend toward the city like technological spiderwebs. Whatever we're going to do, we need to do it fast, Jack said. Those structures, they look like they're trying to establish some kind of permanent presence. Elena studied the new data, her expression growing more concerned. They're quantum field generators. If they activate those, they could phase shift entire sections of the city. We'd lose everything, and everyone, inside those zones. How long? Jack demanded. Based on the energy readings, 12 hours, maybe less. Jack made his decision. Sarah, gather a strike team. Small, elite, volunteers only. Dr. Vasquez, you have 2 hours to prep any equipment you need. We move at dusk. As they rushed to prepare, Elena caught Jack's arm. Commander, there's something else you should know. The quantum signatures we're detecting, they're getting stronger. Whatever the Cosmax found out there in quantum space, it's getting closer. These human hybrids might just be the beginning. Jack looked out through the reinforced windows at the transformed Sydney skyline. The organic crystals pulsed with an inner light, like a technological heartbeat. Somewhere in that alien landscape were the lost minds of Earth's brightest scientists, trapped between states of reality, serving as harbingers for something even worse. Then we better make this count, he said grimly. Because we might not get another chance. Quantum resonance. Twilight painted Sydney's transformed skyline in shades of purple and crimson. The organic crystalline structures that had overtaken much of the city pulsed with an inner light, creating an otherworldly aurora that danced between the buildings. Jack Mason led his small team through the underground maintenance tunnels beneath the city, their footsteps echoing in the concrete passages. Elena Vasquez walked beside him, her backpack filled with modified quantum communication equipment. Behind them, Sarah Chen led a hand-picked team of 4 Special Forces operators, each carrying enough firepower to hold off a small army, though against phase-shifted enemies, conventional weapons were little more than a last resort. The university's quantum lab is in the physics building, Elena whispered, consulting her tablet. The good news is that the Cosmax seem to be using it as some kind of focal point. The bad news is that's exactly why it'll be heavily guarded. How close do you need to get? Jack asked, checking the tunnel map against their position. Within 50 meters of a Cosmax entity. But it needs to be one of the original Aurora team members. Their quantum signatures are distinct from the newer converts. The team reached a junction where the maintenance tunnel connected to the university's underground parking structure. Sarah's hand signal brought everyone to a halt. Above them, they could hear the distinctive hum of Cosmax energy fields. Dr. Vasquez, Sarah whispered, those readings you showed us, about civilian casualties. Are you certain they're still in there? Still human. Elena's face was grim in the dim emergency lighting. Parts of them are. The quantum scans show fragmented but persistent human consciousness patterns. Whatever's controlling them hasn't completely overwritten who they were. That's why we have to try to reach them. Jack raised his hand for silence as new sounds filtered down from above, a rhythmic clicking, like metallic insects skittering across concrete. Those are new, he murmured. Quantum probes, Elena explained, checking her instruments. They're mapping local spacetime. The field generators must be nearly ready. Time check, Jack ordered. 9 hours until the generators activate, Elena replied. Jack made a quick decision. We split up. Sarah, take Williams and Chen, create a diversion on the east side of the campus. Rodriguez and Park, you're with me and Dr. Vasquez. We'll make for the quantum lab while they're distracted. The team separated at the next junction. Jack led his group up through a maintenance shaft that opened into the university's biochemistry building. The corridors were eerily transformed, organic crystalline growths had spread across walls and ceilings, pulsing with that same inner light they'd seen outside. The crystals, Elena whispered, scanning them as they moved. They're not just decoration. They're quantum computers, processing vast amounts of data. The entire city is being turned into one massive quantum network. They reached a skybridge connecting to the physics building. Through the windows, they could see the changed Sydney sprawling below them. The organic ships hung in the sky like technological jellyfish, tendrils of energy connecting them to the growing crystal structures below. Suddenly, explosions rocked the eastern campus, Sarah's diversion. Jack activated his tactical display. Multiple Cosmax units moving to investigate. This is our window. They sprinted across the skybridge, Elena's equipment bouncing in her backpack. The physics building was even more heavily modified than the others. Quantum crystals had completely overtaken the structure, turning it into something that looked more like an alien cathedral than a university building. The lab should be 2 floors down, Elena said, consulting her tablet. And Commander. I'm picking up a familiar quantum signature. Dr. Chen is here. They found the stairs and descended carefully. The quantum crystals grew denser as they approached the lab level, their light pulses becoming more rapid, almost agitated. Elena's tablet began picking up stronger readings. Wait, she whispered urgently. Something's wrong. The quantum patterns, they're changing. Before Jack could respond, a figure phased through the wall ahead of them. It was Dr. James Chen, or what had once been him. His form flickered between solid and energy states, but his face was clearly visible, and aware. Elena, the being said, its voice a strange harmony of human speech and quantum fluctuations. You shouldn't have come. Elena stepped forward, despite Jack's attempt to hold her back. James. We know what happened to you. We're here to help. The transformed scientist's expression showed genuine anguish. You don't understand. What we found out there, it showed us the truth. Reality is so much more complex than we imagined. The phase shift wasn't just about moving between states of matter. It showed us what lies between spaces. What did you find, James? Elena pressed, her hand moving slowly to her equipment. God, another voice answered. Dr. Marcus Way emerged from the crystals, his phase-shifted form more stable than Chen's. We found God in the quantum foam, Elena. And it found us. Jack's tactical display suddenly lit up with warnings. More Cosmax signatures were approaching rapidly. Dr. Vasquez, whatever you're going to do it now. Elena pulled out her modified quantum communicator. James, Marcus, listen to me. Your quantum signatures show your consciousness is still intact. You can fight this. Fight it? James laughed, the sound distorting through quantum fluctuations. We're fulfilling humanity's destiny. The entity showed us the truth, reality itself is conscious, and it's been waiting for us to evolve enough to join it. Elena activated her device, sending out a precise quantum pulse. The crystals around them resonated, their light fluctuating wildly. Both James and Marcus stumbled, their forms becoming more solid for a moment. Your readings, Elena said urgently. They're not showing submission to a higher power. They're showing quantum entanglement on a massive scale. You're being controlled. Marcus's form flickered violently. For a moment, his eyes cleared. Elena, the entity, it lies. It needs physical forms to enter our space. We thought we were becoming gods, but we're becoming vessels. Suddenly, the air itself seemed to tear open. A new form emerged, something that defied description, existing in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Its presence made reality itself shudder. Enough, it spoke, its voice bypassing their ears and resonating directly in their minds. The integration cannot be stopped. Humanity will ascend, willing or not. The entity reached out with tendrils of pure quantum energy. James and Marcus screamed as their forms were forcibly stabilized, their moments of clarity erased. Jack opened fire, his weapons passing harmlessly through the interdimensional being. Elena, run! Jack shouted, throwing a modified grenade. The explosion created a temporary disruption in the quantum field, giving them a moment to escape. They ran back the way they came, pursued by the transformed scientists and something far worse. Elena's tablet was overloading with readings. The entity, she gasped as they ran. It's not just controlling them. It's using the quantum network to pull itself fully into our reality. The field generators, they're not just for converting the city. They're building a bridge between dimensions. They reached the sky bridge just as Sarah's team rejoined them, all of them showing signs of combat. The organic ships above were moving, descending toward the quantum generators. Please tell me you got what you needed, Sarah panted as they ran. Elena's eyes were bright with revelation and fear. I did. I know how to break their connection to the entity. But we're going to need help from every surviving research facility on Earth. Because we're not just fighting for Sydney anymore. She looked back at the quantum tear that was spreading above the physics building, reality itself warping around its edges. We're fighting for the existence of our entire dimension. Echoes of resistance. The underground command center at Pine Gap, Australia's joint defense facility, buzzed with frantic activity. 48 hours had passed since the encounter at the University of Sydney, and the situation had escalated globally. Elena Vasquez stood before a wall of screens showing similar quantum tears appearing over major cities worldwide, London, New York, Tokyo, Moscow. The entity isn't just invading Sydney, Elena explained to the assembled military and scientific leaders from around the world, connected via secure quantum encrypted channels. It's using our converted scientists to create quantum bridgeheads across the planet. Each tear in reality weakens the dimensional barriers further. Jack Mason, now promoted to strategic commander of Earth's Unified Defense Force, stepped forward. Dr. Vasquez has developed a theory about how to counter this threat. I suggest we all listen carefully. Elena pulled up the data from their university encounter. The entity's control over the converted humans isn't complete. It needs constant quantum entanglement to maintain its hold. More importantly, it needs the massive quantum network it's building to fully manifest in our dimension. That's its weakness. Dr. Sarah Zhang, quantum physicist from Beijing's Advanced Research Institute, spoke up through the video feed. The readings you've sent are extraordinary. The entity is using quantum entanglement on a scale we've never imagined possible. Exactly, Elena replied. But entanglement is fragile. If we can create enough quantum decoherence across their network simultaneously, we can break its control. The converted humans might be able to resist. Might? General Richards from NATO Command questioned. We're betting the planet on might. Jack intervened. We've seen evidence that the original consciousness of the converted scientists still exists. During moments when the quantum field fluctuated, they tried to warn us. They're fighting back, but they need our help. Elena brought up a new set of schematics. I've designed a quantum pulse generator that can disrupt their entanglement fields. But we'll need to deploy them globally, and we'll need precise coordination. The entity will detect what we're doing and try to stop us. The screen suddenly flickered with interference. Above Pine Gap, the sky began to darken with approaching Cosmax ships. They'd been discovered. We're out of time for debate, Jack announced. Anyone who's with us, start evacuating your facilities now. We're moving to the backup site. Dr. Vasquez will transmit the technical specifications for the pulse generators. We need every research facility and military installation working on this. As the command center erupted into action, Sarah Chen rushed in. Commander, we've got a new problem. The quantum tiers, they're starting to merge. The main screen showed a horrifying sight. The tiers in reality were growing, connecting like a web of cosmic wounds. Through them, something vast and incomprehensible was beginning to push through. How long? Jack demanded. Elena's calculations were grim. At the current rate of dimensional breakdown, 36 hours before the tiers become irreversible. After that, our reality will begin to collapse into the entity's dimension. The facility shook as the first Cosmax attacks began. But these weren't the controlled, strategic strikes they'd seen before. These were desperate, almost frenzied. They're scared, Elena realized, studying the attack patterns. The entity, it knows we found a way to fight back. It's forcing them to attack more aggressively. Jack made a quick decision. All personnel, execute Emergency Protocol Delta. Begin immediate evacuation to Site B. Dr. Vasquez, what do you need to complete the pulse generator prototype? I need access to a quantum computer powerful enough to calculate the precise frequency needed to disrupt their entanglement. The only one that might work is... Is what? Elena's face was grim. It's in the quantum lab at the University of Sydney. The same one the entity is using as a focal point. The implications hit hard. They would need to fight their way back into the heart of enemy territory, into a building now existing partially in another dimension. That's suicide, Sarah protested. The entity nearly got us last time, and it's only gotten stronger. Maybe not, a new voice joined in. Dr. Raj Patel, a theoretical physicist from India's Space Research Organization, had been quietly analyzing Elena's data. The entity's reaching into our dimension requires enormous energy. That's why it needs the converted humans and the quantum network. But that same network could be used against it. Elena's eyes lit up with understanding. Of course. If we can reverse the quantum polarity of their network. We could turn their own dimensional bridge into a trap, Raj finished. But we'd need to modify the pulse generator design. Jack looked at the countdown showing the time until dimensional collapse. Whatever we're going to do, we need to do it fast. Dr. Vasquez, Dr. Patel, you have 12 hours to modify your design. Everyone else, begin manufacturing the pulse generators according to the original specifications. We'll update you with modifications as they're developed. The screen showed more Cosmax ships arriving, but something was different about them. Their movements were erratic, almost confused. "Look," Elena pointed. "The human consciousness in the converted scientists, it's getting stronger. They're fighting back harder as the entity gets desperate. We need to help them break free." Jack turned to the assembled leaders. "Humanity faced extinction before, ice ages, plagues, wars. Each time, we survived by working together. This enemy thinks it can use our own people against us. It's about to learn why that was its biggest mistake." The facility shook again, harder this time. Through the reinforced windows, they could see the quantum tiers in the sky growing larger, reality itself bending around their edges. But beneath the alien energy patterns, beneath the entity's overwhelming presence, humanity's resistance was growing stronger. In labs and bunkers around the world, scientists began working on the pulse generators. Military forces coordinated global defense strategies. For the first time since the invasion began, Earth was truly united against a common enemy. As they evacuated to Site B, Elena looked at the modified designs taking shape on her tablet. The entity thought it could use our understanding of quantum physics against us. But it didn't count on one thing. "What's that?" Jack asked. "Human stubbornness," Elena smiled grimly. "And our tendency to turn our enemies' weapons against them." Above them, the tiers in reality grew larger, but now they had a plan. The next 24 hours would determine not just the fate of humanity, but the very nature of reality itself. Dimensional dawn. The Sydney Opera House stood like a broken crown against a sky that no longer looked entirely real. Quantum tiers had merged into a vast cosmic wound above the city, through which glimpses of another dimension flickered like fever dreams. Jack Mason led his team through the ruins of Circular Quay, each of them carrying components of Elena's modified pulse generator. "Status report," Jack whispered into his quantum-encrypted communicator. "All global teams in position," Sarah Chen's voice replied from the backup command center. "Pulse generators are deployed at every major quantum tear site. We're just waiting for your signal to begin the synchronized activation sequence." Elena Vasquez checked her instruments as they moved. The quantum readings were off the charts, reality itself was becoming unstable as the entity pushed further into their dimension. But there was something else in the data, something that gave her hope. "The converted scientists," she said quietly to Jack. "Their quantum signatures are fluctuating more than ever. The entity's control is weakening as it focuses on forcing its way through." They reached the university grounds, now transformed into something that defied physics. Buildings stood at impossible angles, sections of architecture existing in multiple states simultaneously. The quantum computer lab at the center had become a twisted spire of organic crystals and phase-shifted matter. "Dr. Patel," Elena called through the secure channel. "Are you seeing these readings?" "Yes," the Indian physicist replied. "The dimensional barrier is critically weak. Once we begin, we'll have only minutes before either the entity is forced back, or our reality collapses completely." Jack positioned his team around the building's perimeter. The modified pulse generator components had to be assembled in specific locations to create the quantum resonance field they needed. As they worked, shapes began emerging from the crystalline structure, the converted scientists, but their forms were different now. The entity's control was visibly struggling to maintain its hold. "Elena." Dr. James Chen's voice was clearer than before, more human. "We can feel it slipping. The entity, it's scared." "Keep fighting, James," Elena urged as she calibrated her equipment. "The entity didn't give you power, it imprisoned you. Everything it showed you about reality was a lie to make you submit." More converted scientists appeared, their forms flickering between states. Dr. Marcus Wei, Dr. Sarah Zhang, and others from Project Aurora. Their movements were jerky, conflicted, as if two forces were fighting for control. Suddenly, the air itself seemed to scream. The entity began manifesting, its true form a horror of impossible geometries and quantum contradictions. But something was wrong. It couldn't fully materialize, couldn't maintain its coherence in their reality. Now, Jack commanded. Around the globe, teams activated their pulse generators. The quantum network the entity had built to invade their dimension lit up with reversed energy. Elena's calculations had been perfect, the network became a trap, using the entity's own quantum bridges against it. The converted scientists screamed as the entanglement began to break. One by one, their forms stabilized, returning to normal matter as the entity's control shattered. But the dimensional tear above them was growing larger, reality groaning under the strain. "It's not enough," Elena shouted over the quantum chaos. "The entity is fighting back through the primary tear." That's when Dr. James Chen stepped forward, his form now fully human again. "We can help. We understand its quantum structure now. We can fight it from both sides." The freed scientists joined Elena at the pulse generator controls. Their experience in the entity's dimension had given them unique insight into its vulnerabilities. Together, they began modifying the quantum frequencies, creating a resonance that the entity couldn't resist. "The tear is beginning to close," Sarah reported from command. Similar reports coming in from all sites globally. "Whatever you're doing, it's working." The entity's form began to distort, pulled back toward its own dimension. But as it retreated, it lashed out with tendrils of pure quantum energy, trying to drag as much of our reality with it as possible. "The quantum spire!" Elena yelled. "If it collapses while the tear is still open, the resonance field will fail." Jack didn't hesitate. He sprinted toward the wavering crystalline structure, planting high-energy quantum charges at key points. The entity sensed his plan and sent what remained of its converted forces to stop him. "Cover him," Sarah ordered, and the freed scientists used their lingering quantum knowledge to hold back their former master's forces. Jack set the final charge and ran. "Everyone clear the blast radius." The charges detonated in a precisely calculated sequence. The quantum spire collapsed inward, its energy focused upward like a dimensional spear. The entity screamed in frequencies that shattered windows across Sydney as the spire's energy pushed it back through the tear. "Quantum resonance peak in 5 seconds." Elena shouted. "Everyone brace." The pulse generators worldwide fired at full power. The quantum network reversed completely, turning from a bridge into a barrier. Reality itself seemed to snap back like a rubber band, the tears sealing themselves with thunderous force. In the sudden silence that followed, the sky above Sydney was blue again. The organic crystals crumbled to dust, and the converted scientists stood fully human, many collapsing from exhaustion. Elena rushed to check her instruments. "The dimensional barriers are stabilizing. The tears are sealed, and the quantum readings are returning to normal." Jack helped James Chen to his feet. "Was it real? Everything you saw in its dimension?" James looked haunted but determined. "Real enough. But it showed us something it didn't intend to, that humanity is capable of so much more than we imagined. Not by submitting to higher powers, but by working together to overcome them." In the days that followed, the world began to rebuild. The knowledge gained from the incident advanced human understanding of quantum physics by decades. The rescued scientists, though traumatized, provided invaluable insights into dimensional physics and consciousness itself. More importantly, humanity had learned it wasn't alone in the cosmos, and that it was stronger than any entity that might try to conquer it. The quantum barriers were monitored constantly, and new defenses were developed using the understanding gained from the invasion. 1 month after the event, as it came to be known, Elena stood with Jack on the roof of the rebuilt Sydney Command Center. The city was recovering, its skyline returning to normal, though reminders of the invasion remained in the form of quantum-scarred buildings and the occasional phase shift echo. "Do you think it's really over?" Jack asked. Elena looked at her quantum scanner, its readings now comfortingly normal. "That entity is gone, but there are probably others out there. The dimensional barriers between realities are thinner than we thought." But next time. Next time we'll be ready, Jack finished. Below them, the city hummed with life, humanity's resilience on full display. In labs around the world, the freed scientists worked to advance Earth's defensive capabilities, turning their traumatic experience into hope for the future. The sun set over Sydney Harbor, its light completely natural, no quantum tears or dimensional wounds in sight. Humanity had faced its greatest challenge and emerged stronger, more united, and more aware of both its vulnerability and its potential. As night fell, the stars became visible, the same stars humanity had always looked to with wonder, but now with a deeper understanding of what lay between them, and a stronger resolve to face whatever might come from beyond. The end.